How creative do you feel? And how confident do you feel in your ability to create the life that you desire? The sacral chakra is the first of our two creative energy centers in the body. And balancing the sacral chakra is an important step in manifestation, but also in our ability to go with the flow and tap into the divine feminine energy within. So, Merry Meet. I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. And today we are here talking about how to balance the sacral chakra. So, welcome to those who are joining us live. Merry Meet. Let me know if the mic is working. We had some issues earlier. I'm on a different mic tonight. So just want to make sure the feed is going through and saying welcome to those joining us live. Of course, as always, we have a Q&A at the end. You can leave your questions and comments, and I will answer all of those at the end. And Merry Meet, everybody. Saying welcome to Kurt and to Melinda and to Andrea. Welcome, Merry Meet, everybody. All right, so we are going to dive right in. Make sure to leave a thumbs up or a heart somewhere in the feed as we go, and that we make sure we get this out to more people. So we're going to start by talking about the sacral chakra first a bit, and then we'll spend the most of tonight's episode talking about different ways that you can use to work with the sacral chakra energy and ideally to balance it so that this important energy center is the energy is flowing through it optimally and it is at your disposal to use. So a bit about the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra in Sanskrit is called Svadhisthana. Now, depending on which translation you look at, sometimes it'll be translated to one's own place or one's own abode. Sometimes it will actually be translated to the word sweetness, which talks about the sacral chakra as being a pleasure center of the body. We will talk about that more later. Whichever interpretation or translation we use, it talks about how this is a center of our body where we need to find home. We need to find our place, right? So this is all about us. Whereas the root chakra is about the way that we kind of anchor down, ground down into the earth, into this incarnation. The sacral chakra is about how we find movement from that rooted place and also how we take pleasure in that movement. Now, the sacral chakra is connected to the pelvic region of the body, so connected to everything between the root and the sacral chakra is all governed by this area of the body. So really, if you think about right at your navel point, if you count down 2 or 3 inches, that is exactly where your sacral chakra is. Now, the other thing that's important to mention about the sacral chakra is that it is connected to the root below it and is connected to the solar plexus above it, which we will talk about in a future episode. Why it's important to mention this now, though, is that chakras don't really stand in isolation. So even though we have a whole episode on the sacral chakra, I've had one on the root, we'll have one on how to balance the other chakras as well. In reality, this is part of a system. So anytime that we are working on the sacral chakra, we also need to notice what's going on either side of it, in our root and also in our solar plexus. In many ways, we can think of the bottom 3 chakras, root, sacral chakra, and solar plexus, as working as a triad. We call it the bottom triangle or the bottom triad of our energy. In those of us who are working, with trying to elevate our energy, working with deities, working with spirits and things outside of us, working with our intuition, we're always sort of focused on moving our energy up through the body to these higher energy centers, and we often forget that the foundation is below. And so for this reason, just as I mentioned in the root chakra episode last week, many very spiritual people will find that they have some imbalances in these lower chakras, including the sacral chakra. So working to balance this lower triad really is the key to elevating our energy, and it's something that we often will forget. Now, the sacral chakra is connected to the element of water. It vibrates with the color orange, and so we'll talk about, when we talk later about ways to work with the sacral chakra, we're going to be talking about you working with the color orange. The sacral chakra is associated with our creativity, as I mentioned in the intro. It's connected to our emotions. It's connected to our ability to flow and be fluid. The movement of the sacral chakra is fluid and flowing. It helps us to let go and just be able to go with the flow. And if you think about a tree, you kind of use building on the analogy that we started with the root chakra last week. A tree must be rooted, right? But also, as it grows, it needs to have the ability to bend so that it doesn't break. And that's really what the sacral chakra is all about. So we find our rooting and our stability and our security with the root and our grounding. But as that energy rises up through our body, it needs to be able to flow. And that's what this chakra is all about. Now, this chakra is also connected to our sensuality and our sexuality. So if we have issues expressing us there, we're going to have issues with this chakra. It's connected to pleasure in general. Later on, we're going to talk about some types of shadow work that you can do surrounding the sacral chakra, and one of them is considering where we allow ourselves to experience pleasure and where we don't, and the blockages that might surround that. Now, working with the sacral chakra can help us overcome our guilt. It can also help us create and hold healthy boundaries. Again, all of this kind of coming back to our shadow work. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And it can also help us with difficulties that we may experience in our own self-care. So many people who overgive have no problem taking care of other people, but when that's turned back around on us, it can sometimes be hard to take help and care from others, and it can also be hard to show that same care and help to ourselves. Now, when we fully can accept and understand our own needs, that is a major key to really truly being able to balance this chakra and tap into it. So many people many times we are suppressing our needs and our desires at this level, and this can be a hindrance in this energy center. So finding that balance is going to be key here. So if you are somebody who is looking to really outwardly manifest and create the life that you want, and you feel that you're being blocked, it could be an issue of this chakra. So we really have to ask ourselves, how accepting of our own needs are we? How much can we go with the flow? How are we able to let go and tap into that divine feminine energy? And if we find that we have a lot of blockages here, it's inevitable that those blockages are going to be evident outside in the things that we are trying to manifest. So if you are also doing a lot of restricting, and that could be anything in your life, you're going to have issues with this chakra as well. So doing shadow work around that. Why do we restrict the things that we desire? Why do we restrict the things that are good for us? For example, with our own self-care. And why do we desire the things that are bad for us? For example, if we're restricting things that are bad, like cigarettes, for example, and a person has a craving for those, perhaps, well, some of it's chemical, right? A good portion of it's chemical, but at least the emotional and the psychological aspect of it is why do we crave things and force ourselves to restrict things that are bad for us. So all of this is all wrapped up neatly into the package of the sacral chakra. So signs that your sacral chakra needs some work is anything that I have mentioned previously. So having issues with boundaries, having issues with guilt and shame and our sensuality, our sexuality, our ability to go with the flow, our ability to soothe ourselves with our own self-care. So those would all be indications that your sacral chakra has some issues if you have issues in any of those areas. But additionally, there are also signs that you can look for in your own body. And so I encourage you to, as if you're with us live, or even if you're watching us in replay, put in the chat, what are your issues with the sacral chakra? Is your sacral chakra totally balanced? Are you having no issues in any of these areas? Or do you feel that you do have some issues? And where are they? So here are some signs that your sacral chakra is imbalanced from the perspective of your physical body. So any rigidity or stiffness in the body is a sign of the sacral chakra being compromised. So that rigidity and stiffness extends beyond just the natural like stiffness that you might feel when you wake up. It's natural to feel a little stiffer than we will later in the day when we first wake up. But as soon as you get your body moving, if you're still feeling a lot of that stiffness, that is an indication that we have some issues in the sacral chakra. Now, especially if that stiffness is around your hips, because that is the body region that is connected to the sacral chakra. Now, other areas would be just rigid joints and muscles can be a sign of sacral chakra, the need for some sacral chakra work. A stiff gait. So, when you think about the way you walk, if you've ever been told that you walk kind of stiffly, that is an indication of some imbalances in the sacral chakra, especially if there's not very much movement in the hips. Emotions that might arise when we're having issues with the sacral chakra. It's just emotions in general, if the emotions are dysregulated. Now, there can be two kind of sides to this. So, on one side, we might feel empty, we might feel isolated, we might feel stuck. And on the other side, we might feel like we have too many emotions. We might feel like we're kind of overcome by our emotions and we can't control them when we need to. We might find that they're labile, meaning that they're kind of shifting and fluctuating back and forth all the time and kind of dysregulated. So emotional issues can always be a sign of some sacral chakra, need for some sacral chakra work. Additionally, sexual issues, shame surrounding sex, difficulty connecting, lack of passion and excitement, and this can be in any area of your life. So sometimes I talk to people who say that they're not passionate about anything, and that is definitely a sign of some real deep need to do some work at the sacral chakra level. So if you are finding that you were passionate and excited, and now you're in sort of a slump where you're not feeling excited or passionate about anything, this points back to this area. And it also can point back to your root, because remember, a lot of this is, these chakras are very much interconnected, and the root is the place where we will often get sluggish energy that can lead to depression. But the sacral chakra is where we're going to get that sort of sluggish energy leading to that lack of passion. We might also have creative blockages, which we'll spend some time talking about. So first of all, everyone is creative in their own way. Creativity looks different. You don't have to be a writer or a painter or a musician to be a creative person. We all are. But if you feel that you are having creative blockages in the ability to create anything, right? That could be a creative project, or it can be creating the life that you want. Then this is the chakra to do some work with. Other physical issues, disorders of the reproductive system, in hormonal dysregulation. So if your hormones are out of balance, sacral chakra is the place to do the energetic work, in addition to any other physical work you might be doing. Issues of the spleen, of the urinary system. It makes sense. All of this is all in that same area. Low back pain, hip pain, tight hips, like I mentioned earlier, and then just a lack of overall flexibility. Deadened senses, loss of appetite can go to the root, but also points to some issues of the sacral chakra, because food is meant to be pleasurable. And so if we are having like kind of lack of appetite, we're lacking kind of taking in that pleasure in some way. So that is about the extent of what we're going to talk about with how to know the sacral chakra is compromised or has some imbalances. Probably that is enough for you to be able to decide if yours is or not, or isn't. So share in the chat with us how you're experiencing your sacral chakra. And let me just see here. So saying Merry Meet to a few others who are here. Nancy and Tommy, Merry Meet everybody. Sabrina, Tracy. Sabrina asked, can the sacral also become your health? Or can it affect your health? Yeah. So any of the bottom three chakras absolutely can affect your health, and especially if the areas that are being affected are the ones I mentioned, like kind of lower parts of the body, especially. definitely going to be affected. The root chakra is also very much connected to your physical health because it's connected to your body overall. So the root connects us to the body, and then the sacral chakra connects us to the emotions. So a lot of emotional issues are here. Um, but overall, the bottom three chakras are going to be connected to your physical health more so than some of the upper chakras are. So Kurt said his knees are often stiff when he first gets up, and again, stiffness when you're first waking up is very natural. If you start to move and you're still feeling the stiffness, then that's going to point to some sluggish energy in the lower parts of the body, in particular with the knees, usually root chakra. But again, like I mentioned, it's hard to really isolate one chakra. And so what I usually tell people is like if you recognize that you have some issues of your sacral chakra, it's wise to really work with the whole bottom triad, sacral, root, and solar plexus. So same goes with like if you notice you have some issues with the root, it's very wise to work with the entire lower triad. Tracy said you answered my question with having depression. Yeah, definitely depression is definitely here in the sacral and also in the root chakra. Andrea said backache, the stiff gait, definitely sacral chakra. She said it could be because I've been working through some shame I have from younger years. And actually, an important thing to note here too is that when you start to work on some of the issues, there's this phrase that we sometimes say that things can get worse before it can feel worse before it gets better. So sometimes what will happen is we start to work through some kind of a shadow work issue like shame, which is connected to the sacral chakra. You may notice that your body starts to exhibit signs of sacral chakra imbalances. And it's basically because you're working through it right now. Just trust that you're moving through it. The energy will start to move and get moving again. But sometimes it can feel like, I'm working on it, and then all of a sudden it like highlights everything else about that chakra, even if you didn't notice it before. And it could be too that it was already there and it just became a little bit more pronounced with your work. But I do believe with the continued work that will start to resolve itself. Sabrina said not eating much is her issue. So again, connected to sacral chakra and to the root chakra for sure. So if you start to balance those, you're going to start to notice that you may be hungrier. You may crave foods again. You may crave pleasure again in ways that you weren't before. All right, so great questions. And again, as you relate to things, put them in the chat because it can be very useful for other people who are here. It can help people feel less alone when they hear about your experiences. And it also obviously helps the people watching and replay later too to hear what people are saying. Okay, so if you want to learn more about the sacral chakra, you can check out Ask Aislin episode 63. I go into more details on how to tell if your sacral chakra is excessive versus restrictive, which are two different types of energy. Oftentimes the pathway to health is the same. We're trying to balance the center, and anything we do with this energy center is going to help move us back towards equilibrium. So sometimes it doesn't really matter which side you're on, but if you're interested in whether you are excessive or restrictive, check out episode 63. Or if you really want to get into it, consider joining Shadow Seekers in our next round. If you're not already a member, we have 2 full long couple hour workshops on the sacral chakra. One on kind of healing the sacral chakra and how to tell whether your sacral chakra is in balance, and another on how to do the shadow work surrounding it. All right, but I would like to spend the rest of the time tonight talking about how to balance the sacral chakra. So my goal here is that when we leave here, hopefully you will have 1 or 2 or 3 practices that kind of resonate with you. So if you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, I was reading off that checklist and you're thinking, oh my sacral chakra is really imbalanced, don't despair. I always say don't despair, especially if you listen to these episodes and you're like every single chakra you feel like you have some issues with. Don't despair, because we have remedies for this. And while they may not be quick fixes, like where we just snap our fingers and we're fixed, these practices absolutely do help to bring you back to equilibrium eventually, and feel good while you're doing it. Okay, so let us start with the first one. And as we go, if you've ever tried anything like this, let us know how it went for you. And if you have other things that you do to balance your sacral chakra that we don't talk about, share those as well. So, the first thing is intuitive movement. And I've talked about it in a few other episodes. I will continue to talk about it over and over because it is such a healing practice. Now, intuitive movement is where we let our bodies move in the way that they want to. So, really, it's about creating body awareness. Now, later, we're going to talk about body love, like really being able to anchor into and establish some true body acceptance and body love. But this is kind of the first step here, is finding body awareness. So what ends up happening to a lot of very spiritual people is they will tell you that they sometimes feel like they're kind of cut off from the body. They're up in the head, which makes a lot of sense because we're doing a lot of things that push our energy upwards into the higher energy centers. So like anything intuitive that we're doing, anytime that we're connecting to deities, anytime that we're connecting to the elements and different spirits outside of us, we're all working in these upper chakras. So it makes sense that we would be not on purpose ignoring the bottom, but it's a side effect, it's a product of that, of ignoring kind of the bottom parts of our energy centers. So having kind of living with this kind of chopped off head, or just kind of living up in the head, creates issues. So what it means is that we're really not as intuitive as we could be. So we kind of think we're working up in these higher energy centers in order to be intuitive, but we're actually, it's like we're kind of we're keeping our full potential from really being able to be found because of that. So what intuitive movement does is it forces you back down into the body, and it forces you to develop some body awareness. So at its very simplest level, what you do is I recommend putting on some music. I would recommend putting on soothing music to begin, just kind of music that can allow you to move slowly. If you decide that you really love this technique, then absolutely you can try it out with any kind of music that evokes any type of emotion, even fast emotions like anger and things like that. And it can be a real way to get rid of some of that energy that's sort of building up in your body. But at least in the beginning, if you've never done this before, try to find some kind of soothing, relaxing music that you can listen to for a while. I personally recommend music that doesn't have any words to it or lyrics, mainly because, at least for me, and maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but it's going to apply to some people. For me, I will start to kind of hone in on the lyrics, and I will start to like be listening to the lyrics and perhaps even analyzing the lyrics. And the idea here is we don't want any analysis. We don't want anything up in the brain. We want this all in the body. So drumming can be very effective here. Kind of trance-like music can be very good here. Just I would recommend stuff that doesn't have lyrics, at least in the beginning. And you close your eyes, put yourself in a space where you're not going to be disturbed. You're not going to worry about other people coming in or out or looking at you. And then you just begin to move your body to the music, and you just let it move. And you really see if you can divorce your sort of mind, your logical mind, from this, and listen to the body. What does your shoulder want to say? What do your hips want to say? What do your knees want to say right now? What do they want to do? Um, so as you are doing this intuitive movement, you may find that it evokes emotions. Usually that has to do with the fact that you are tapping into some energy that got stuck in your body. Now, this energy can get stuck in your body from a variety of places. A lot of times it's just coming from our trauma that we're just holding on to. But it can also be like simple things that you wouldn't even think of as trauma. So like startle reflex. So like this is just an example, but let's suppose, and this has happened to me. So suppose you're walking out, and you are kind of walking, and you're sort of in your zone and in your world, and all of a sudden this dog starts barking really loudly, and it startles you, right? And there's going to be this startle experience, like the startle reaction in your body. And so naturally what we need to do is we need to like let go. There was no threat. The body startles because in the moment before you actually can comprehend what's going on, it feels like there's a threat. That's what the body thinks, right? And then there is no threat, and time passes on, but you're still like this and you're still sort of carrying some of that energy. So unless you actively work to let go of it over time, some of that energy just gets stuck in your body, and that's in a simple way that isn't related to some of the deep issues of trauma that we might imagine, right? So of course that energy can come from trauma, but it can also build up from just simple like things like that, or driving in the car. And let's say that you live in a place where there's a lot of traffic like we do here in LA, and you are constantly sort of in this anxious space when you're driving, and you're holding on to all of that energy, and unless you consciously let it go, a little bit of it you're going to carry that on with you. Okay, and that's how some of the stuck and stagnant energy can also be built. So intuitive movement allows us to move it out, let go of it. What is your shoulder carrying, your neck carrying, and how could we let go of it? So another thing that intuitive movement can also help us with is it can help us with body awareness. So starting to understand when your body speaks to you, what is it saying? A lot of times we just ignore it. Okay, my knee hurts, or my back hurts, or my neck hurts, and we just sort of ignore that. But your body is speaking to you, and through intuitive movement, you start to develop more of that body awareness. And eventually you will also be able to understand different parts of your body. When they speak to you, they may mean different things, and you start to learn that. But you don't learn that unless you pay attention. And that all begins with intuitive movement. So try that and see how it works. If anybody's ever done intuitive movement, let us know how it worked for you. I have stories of people who, very locked up in their bodies, and then allowed themselves to try intuitive movement and basically begin to weep. They have like all this like emotional discharge, which is very good. This is what we want. We want the emotions to be let go of, and we don't want to be holding on to them all the time. All right, and Merry Meet to Cersei, who's also with us. Merry Meet, everybody. All right, so next idea is sort of related. There's a theme here with the Sacral Chakra. Again, it's about just going with the flow. So the next idea is a spontaneous day. Now, I've mentioned this before. Spontaneous day is one of my favorite ways to work with the Sacral Chakra. You can take it, there's an extension of this where we play the synchronicity game. But at the level of this, working with the Sacral Chakra, we're just going to focus on spontaneous day. Now, if you cannot put aside a day to do this, you can do a couple of hours of spontaneous, just kind of getting off script. So the idea here is to have no plans, no schedule. And for many of us, even when it's our days off, we cram them full of all the things that we're going to do. Or think about like when people say like, I need a vacation from my vacation, because they cram the vacation full of so much. So the idea behind spontaneous day is that we just let go and we go with the flow. And you really try to tap into like, where do I feel called to go today? Now, personally, I love spontaneous day on foot. But you can absolutely be in a car as well, and I've done it in a car. And you just sort of drive your car, and you listen. Turn right. If you have this inclination to turn right, you turn right here. Turn left here. Park here. Go in this store. Eat this food, and you really tap into like, I'm on no schedule at all, and I'm just going to move from one place to the next place, just following sort of my body's lead, following the call of my energy. I'm just following that lead wherever I go. So if you can't do this for a full day, you can absolutely still tap into it even for an hour, if you can get off schedule for an hour. But I do encourage you, if you're somebody who really can't find even the hour, really think about it. I know how busy we get. Believe me, I know. I work like 60 hours a week. So I know the challenges of trying to find time like this. But if you can begin to just find the little bits of time, you will eventually know, and you'll notice that you will find more time. It's kind of magical how it works that way. I plan, as I've said as many times, I have this mini course coming out, which is about how to build a spiritual practice. And I'm going to teach you all the things that I have done, where I went from only literally being able to have 5 minutes of time for a spiritual practice, and I committed to that. and eventually I was able to build that into a much longer practice. It is really interesting how the universe, like when it sees you starting to kind of put your energy in the right place, all of a sudden it opens up space for more time. And so that's what I feel about the spontaneous day exercise. Even if all you can put aside is 30 minutes to try it, and do that and do it a couple of times, you will probably find that you find more time eventually. It's funny how the universe can work that way. All right, so that is the spontaneous day, kind of related again to an intuitive movement, but we're making it much bigger. We're going out in the world. I've done this in Sedona before, where I just followed sort of my feet wherever they were leading me, and it led me to some really incredible places and different people that I met along the way, and kind of go in this store and found this perfect stone, and it's just the possibilities are really endless with this idea. Okay, so the next idea is working with the water element. So, as I mentioned earlier, the water element is the element that is connected to the sacral chakra. So, there's lots of ideas on how we can work with the water element. We actually have an episode on working with the water element. I see my hair is all crazy here. It's been kind of a crazy day here, trying to get the microphone to work, and I'm just grateful that we're live right now. Okay, so how do we work with the water element? So we can spend time near water. So that can look different for everybody. So those of you who are near bodies of running water, you can go to bodies of water like the ocean. You can go to visit lakes. You can go to rivers and streams. If there's a creek nearby, there's a creek that's about 10 miles from here that I love to hike to, and then just sit at the creek, at the creek side, listening to the sound of the creek is so meditative and so soothing. And it also allows me to tap into the energy of water, which is more prominent in places where there is water. So that's why going to a place with water is very helpful here. But if you don't have any places with kind of running water, you can visit pools. Hot tubs always work, your bathtub, your shower, going out and standing in the rain. There's lots of possibilities here. So spending time near water, building a water altar. So last week when we talked about the root chakra, we spent some time talking about how to build an earth element altar. So the same goes here for building a water altar. You can take your own altar. So like if you have a sort of permanent altar like I do back here, you can place items on it connected to the water element. Or if you decide that you want to work with the sacral chakra, let's say you want to commit to sacral chakra work for a month or for a couple of weeks, you can actually build a water altar. So some ideas are blue altar cloth on the water altar. Place things on the altar that are connected to the water element for you. It's going to look different for everybody. One of the simplest things you can do is a bowl of water is excellent. And sometimes that's all, just setting out a bowl of water in a kind of a special place just for it. That is the start. Even if you don't have a lot of space, you can set a bowl of water out on top of a bookcase. Maybe put a blue candle near it, or some seashells, or other things that you feel are connected to the water. Imagery of fish, or sea animals, turtles, dolphins, whales, sharks. You can also keep and a few other things for your water altar. Since the tool that is connected to water is the cauldron and the chalice, you could put one or either of those on your altar as well in order to create a water altar. Now, another thing to do to connect to the water element is to keep a moon cycles journal. So if you've never paid attention to the moon cycles before, outside of just knowing it's the full moon tomorrow, it's not the full moon tomorrow, but I'm just saying hypothetically, or it's the first quarter moon today, things like that. If you've never really followed yourself and your energy through the cycles, I highly recommend this. So what you do is you just get a little notebook, and it only takes you about a minute a day, and you look up the phase that the moon is in, and you can find any calendar that can do it. just look up, or you can just literally Google what phase is the moon in today, and write that down. So write down the moon phase. Then you will write down how you're feeling. So I would write down how you're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, and energetically. And that takes about, like I said, about a minute. And then you would do that the next day and the next day and the next day. And the thing is that if you only do this for one cycle, it's still good. You're still going to have some good information, but you really want to do this for at least 3 lunar cycles so that you could start to see the patterns. And you may also notice that your energy shifts. It may not always be the same at certain parts of the cycle, but you would never know that unless you tracked this. So there are also different trackers out there that you can use, or you can put the information in, or I'm working on creating a PDF that people can print out, and then you can just write it all on the PDF and fill it out there. But keeping a moon cycle journal is a great way to work with the water element and kind of notice how the water ebbs and flows in your own life. Other things you can do are working with the planets. Venus and the moon both are connected to the water element. So if you're somebody who likes to work with planetary energies, those would be 2 good planets to work with. I already mentioned this, but I'll say it again. Also working with animals that are connected to the water element, like dolphins, whales, sharks, seals, turtles, fish, frogs, swans, etc. So any animal that is connected to the water element can also help connect you to the water element. And this is one that we will often overlook, but make sure that you drink enough water. So the reality is the average person doesn't drink nearly the amount of water that they need. I know that I don't. This is something I'm constantly working on. So there's some sources that will tell you that you should be drinking half of your body weight in ounces. So for example, if you weigh 150 pounds, then that would be 75 ounces of water a day. So there's some sources that say that. There are some sources that say you should be drinking even more than that. At the end of the day, the reality is that most of us are probably not drinking enough unless you really do make a concerted effort to do so. I know that I don't unless I'm really focused on it. So do that. Water is it's very lubricating for the body. It's cooling for the body, and again, helps us to balance the sacral chakra. Okay, next idea, working with the color orange. So whereas the element of water is connected to blue, the sacral chakra itself is connected to the color orange. So there are those who say that, people who can see auras will tell you that the sacral chakra vibrates with this orange color. So how could you bring the color orange into your life? There's a lot of different ways. Sometimes we don't even think of all these different ways, so we can bring in orange candles. So again, like if you want to dedicate some time just to working with the sacral chakra, let's say you want to dedicate the next lunar cycle to it, you could get a nice orange candle and you could charge it with your intention of balancing your sacral chakra. And then you could place it on an altar, or you could light it every day. You could bring in more orange candles around you. You can bring in orange as a color of your clothing. You can bring in orange in house decor. So bringing in some orange flowers, for example, decorating the house with orange flowers. Stones and jewelry that are orange are also connected to the sacral chakra. So my personal favorite stone of the sacral chakra is carnelian. But there are some others that you can use. Some of these also, like tiger's eye, is very good for the sacral chakra and also connected to the root. So if you know that you are somebody who wants to do root and sacral chakra work, a tiger's eye would be a very good stone to have. Orange calcite is another really good one. Sunstone is a great, excellent chakra for sacral chakra and also connects you to the solar plexus. So if you're somebody who wants to do sacral and solar plexus work, sunstone would be great. Moonstone is also often connected to the sacral chakra, even though it's not orange. It is connected to the water element and to the lunar energy, so it makes sense why it would be connected to the sacral chakra. And then amber and also goldstone. So if you don't know much about goldstone, it is not actually a stone. It's glass with pyrite poured into it, and it's usually like an orange color, but there are other variations of it. I have some really beautiful like dark blue goldstone, but that can be another stone that's connected to the sacral chakra. Food. So foods that are orange are also connected to the sacral chakra, and we often forget this. That we can make some shifts in our diet to also supplement the work that we're doing around a certain chakra. So orange peppers, carrots, oranges, tangerines, mangoes. Those are kind of obvious because of their color. Anything squash, anything that is like an orange color is going to immediately be connected here. I think I said carrots, right? Other things that are connected to the sacral chakra are going to be things that are connected to water as well, like oysters and clams. So if you are somebody who eats seafood, those could be options for you. Other things that are also connected to other foods that are also connected to the sacral chakra are figs and pomegranates. Foods that are like fertility foods are often connected to the sacral chakra because, again, think about where this is in the body and what it, what it's associated with, the different things it's associated with. So for that reason, eggs are also connected to the sacral chakra. So if you want to bring food into your, especially if you are trying to sort of work with appetite, is maybe pick a few foods that you enjoy and see if you can pick a few that are orange, and then you would also be kind of supplementing with that kind of energy. And then, as I mentioned earlier, liquids. So, making sure that you're drinking enough water and juice, anything that is liquid is going to be connected here. All right. And Chelsea says she has a beautiful moon-based planner this year called the 13 Moon Journal. Yeah, I was going to mention that journals, like if you want to like splurge and buy a journal that's already set up to do lunar work, and now would be a great time to do it if you want to commit to some sacral chakra work. But there's some really beautiful ones out there that like just when you have something so beautiful to work with, it sort of serves as that impetus, right? And so like you're going to push through maybe a resistance to doing the work because you have something so nice to work through. Okay, working with deities connected to the sacral chakra and or the water element or the moon. Okay, so my list is not, it's never exhaustive. I'm just going to give some ideas, but any deities you can think of connected to the moon will work here. Any deities connected to water will also work here. So usually when we begin the discussion of deities for a certain chakra, we usually start with Hindu deities. Again, this is because the practices all come from India. These practices come from India. The chakra system itself originates in that area, and so there's going to be a lot of extensive writing about deities from the Hindu pantheon and how they connect to the chakras. So last week we talked about Ganesha. He is said to live in the root chakra of all people. So here, a deity that is connected to the sacral chakra is Lakshmi and also her consort Vishnu. Sarasvati is sometimes connected to the sacral chakra, though I often think of her more as connected to the throat, but she is connected through her connection to water and also to her connection to creativity. She's a very good goddess to work with for creativity, also a very good goddess to work with if you want to speak your truth. And kind of work with your throat chakra in addition. And so it's something I didn't mention. I just mentioned it briefly. We'll talk about it more when we study the throat chakra. But there is a deep connection between the sacral chakra and the throat chakra because they're the two energetic centers of creativity in the body. So the sacral chakra is usually thought of as being more about physical creation, like what can we create like here in the world around us, and that extends far beyond just like the physical creativity of getting pregnant or a pregnancy like that. This is also like what else can you physically create in your physical space around you. That is the sacral chakra. Now the throat chakra is because it's up in the spiritual chakras it's connected to creativity and the creation of things like in the etheric world. And so if we really want to manifest, we want to make sure that we're using both of these. And so we're kind of tapping into this like deep creativity, like that's in the womb. And by the way, there in many cases, we might think of the womb as only being connected to females, but it's connected to everybody. Everybody has this creative center inside of them. Sometimes we call it the hara. That is another way to look at it. Like the hara is, it's not. I wouldn't necessarily say it is a chakra, but it's an energetic sort of area in the body. Some say it's sort of in between the sacral chakra and the solar plexus, but it's like every person's creative center. And we all have it, regardless of like whether we think we're creative or not, regardless of the gender that we are, it doesn't matter. We all have this creative center here. But if we tap into that, and then we also tap into the throat chakra through like speaking out loud or chanting or singing or like saying our intentions out to the universe, then we kind of do double duty with our ability to manifest, because we're tapping into the creative energy of two centers in the body. So that was a little side tangent off of Sarasvati, but anytime that to me, it's like it's really important for us to look at the interconnections between the energy centers, because again, like I said, we talk about them in isolation because it's easy to study them this way, but they don't operate in isolation. They operate because they connect to all the other energy centers around them. So other deities not of the Hindu pantheon, Yamaya and Oshun, who are Yoruban, Venus and Aphrodite. We have that connection to kind of like water and the moon. Tiamat from the Mesopotamian pantheon, Diana, Poseidon, Dionysius. Some of the Dionysius and Pan are always mentioned here because of the connection to like pleasure and receiving the goodness of life. Hathor, Mari is a Basque deity who is connected to water, and she's also connected to like rainstorms. So as I mentioned earlier, this is not an exhaustive list. Any deities that you can think of that would be connected to the moon, to water, or to creativity would all be, or pleasure, would all be good ones to work with when you are working with your sacral chakra. Working with essential oils can also be a good way to tap into the sacral chakra. Now, essential oils are good for any chakra, so there's going to be a list of essential oils for every chakra, but especially here, because they are liquid, and this chakra is all about liquid and flowing and pouring and things like that, essential oils are especially good for the sacral chakra. So here are a few that you can work with: sandalwood, jasmine, neroli, rose, clary sage, lang lang, gardenia. Not an exhaustive list. I've also seen patchouli on it as well. Patchouli also can connect you to the root chakra. These oils in particular are also, I'm going to mention it for anybody who wants to balance hormones, especially female hormones. If you do a blend of rose, clary sage, lang lang, and gardenia all together, that is a great, that would be a great combination for balancing female hormones. And you can put it into some kind of a carrier oil like sweet almond. So I'll just mention that again: rose, clary sage, lang lang, and gardenia. And if you can't find rose because it's very expensive, but you can find jasmine, you could swap out rose for jasmine. So, but any of these oils very good for sacral chakra. So next idea is yin yoga. So yin yoga in particular is the type of yoga that's very good for the sacral chakra, especially yin yoga that is focused on the hips and the low back. So if you've never done yin yoga before and you don't know what it is very different than traditional yoga. So if you don't know much about yoga and you kind of think about what you've seen, it's sort of flowing through these motions, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. In yin yoga, there isn't really much flowing at all. So what we do is we find a pose and we hold that pose for 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes even longer. So during that time, a lot of things will happen. So, number one, there's this great benefit because your body is able to relax enough that you kind of for one thing, it's sort of your, it will help you to stretch your fascia. So, fascia is the covering on the outside of the muscles, and it will lose hydration as we age and as we get like a lot of the stiffness that people feel is because the fascia is not lubricated in the way that it needs to be. And so, what yin yoga can do is it slowly helps to stretch the fascia so that we actually can get a little deeper into the muscles below it, and then eventually helps to stretch the muscles. Now, yin is excellent over time. So whereas regular yoga can build up strength and some flexibility, yin yoga is really the key to flexibility. It was a big game changer for me. I mean, even after years of practicing yoga, I got better at it. I got stronger at it. Never really considered myself very flexible until I found yin. And so in yin, it can sometimes test you because sometimes people want to get up and go. So this really tests you because you have to sink down into these poses and you have to be there for a while. And during that time, uncomfortable emotions can come up. So it's not unusual for people as you sort of like as you are relaxing your physical body, you start to travel even deeper down into your etheric body, your energetic body, where you're holding some of this stuck and stagnant energy, and all of a sudden you relax enough and it will let go of some of that energy. And you may not even know that, and then a person will start to weep or to cry, or they'll be sort of overcome with emotions. It's very cathartic. It's not a bad thing at all. Afterwards, it feels really good. And there's just, if you never tried it before, I highly suggest it. And here's a couple of poses. So if you are somebody who already does yin yoga, you'll know what I'm talking about with these poses. But if you're somebody new to it, just Google yin yoga on YouTube. I really like Brett Larkin, is somebody I will always recommend. She has some good yin yoga videos on there. There's also a woman named Cassandra. It's Yoga with Cassandra. And then there's another woman, I can't remember her name, but her channel is called the Yoga Ranger. And she does almost exclusively yin. But pigeon pose of all forms is very good for your hips in yin yoga. Bridge pose, broken bridge, deer pose, lunges and lizard pose that get down into the hips. A lot of these poses are going to be low on the ground. And that can be the beauty of this too. Like if you are feeling, that you don't have a lot of energy to do a lot of movement, this can be a really good practice for you because you don't have to move much. You just get into the pose and then you stay there for a while. And one of the things I particularly love about yin is taking affirmations connected to a certain chakra. So let's say you're working on self-care, for example. Let's say you don't give yourself enough self-care, and you say you create an affirmation like, I am able to listen to my body's needs and respond with the right self-care. And then what you would do is you get down into this pose and you would be there for 5 minutes and you would repeat this affirmation in your head over and over and over again. And, it may not be the practice for everybody, but if you are open to it, I highly recommend it. Try it. If you hate it, you hate it. You move on. You never do it again. But sometimes you may find that it is a real gift. And that was what happened for me. Seed sounds. So the seed sound of the sacral chakra is VUM. It's spelled VAM, but we pronounce it VUM. As I said last week with the root chakra, seed sounds should be vibrated low in the body. So it would be like VUM. Now, seed sounds are, they can change the energy in your body. So not only is it, we know intellectually it is connected to the sacral chakra, but it also shifts the energy of your sacral chakra just by vibrating it. Because Sanskrit is a vibrational language, it carries more than just meaning. It carries the ability to change energy. Now, a second seed sound that you could use at the sacral chakra is shreem. So sometimes it's spelled SHREEM. Sometimes it's spelled Shrim, Shrim. Now, Shrim is the seed sound of Lakshmi. And we mentioned earlier, she is a goddess who is connected to the sacral chakra. She has her own water origin story that is kind of similar to Venus's. She's connected to creativity and flowing movements. She's connected to fertility and abundance and pleasure. And so she is a goddess that you can absolutely work with, as we mentioned earlier, but you can also just chant the seed sound Shrim, and it helps to bring kind of that more abundant energy, that kind of water energy into your life. So that is working with the seed sounds, and again, like with Vam, you would not want to intone this low in the body, so it would sound like Shreem. And you can chant it 4 or 5 times like that, and then just sort of sit in the energy that you've created around you. Shadow work is another way that we can work with any chakra. There's certain areas of our shadow work that are connected to different chakras. Shadow work itself, like the sacral chakra itself, is very much connected to shadow work because it's about getting into our emotional body. So some of this is going to be review of things we've talked about previous in the episode, but here are some areas to work on in your shadow work if you also want to work with the sacral chakra. So denial and shaming of emotions. So kind of if you are somebody who denies your emotions or you feel ashamed of your emotions, trying to trace back where that comes from can be an important part of your shadow work. A lot of times you're going to find it's not you, it's going to get traced back to somebody else, something that somebody said to you when you were a child a lot of times, or places where you like kind of put yourself out there and then you were not met with acceptance. That can teach us to be shameful of our emotions. But trying to figure out where that comes from and work through some of that shame can be an important part of our shadow work. Denial of pleasure. So if you're somebody who like can't give yourself the things that you need or that you find pleasurable, if you would answer that question, what are you passionate about? What do you take pleasure in? And you say nothing. Then that's a real true sign that you have some deep work probably to do at this level. Because even in our darkness and our anxious times, oftentimes we can still think of the things that make us happy and give us pleasure and bring us and make us feel passionate. But if you feel sort of like passionate, then you want to definitely try to do some work here. Where does it come from? Who denied themselves pleasure in your previous or in your life when you were growing up? And how did you pick up some of those messages? Where does it come from? A lot of times, like I said, it's not coming from you. It's coming from messages that you learned when you were young. We got to learn how to break that connection, or at least to notice, to acknowledge that connection, so we can see that that's not just something inherent in us. Shame surrounding sexuality. So there may be people who shamed us over our own sexuality, or over the who we were attracted to, who we love, right? And so if you carry some of that shame, that can be a place in your shadow work where you could do some work. Poor boundaries. If you can't set up boundaries good enough, then you're going to want to look at where does that come from? Who in your life modeled that? When was the first time you can remember setting up a boundary and then letting people step over it? Or who in your life stepped over boundaries? So again, our shadow work is always going back into the past usually, or even into the not so distant past. It can be sort of recent, but trying to figure out, where does this come from? Where do my feelings come from? Where do my automatic reactions come from, or my automatic inclinations come from? Other things, overgiving. A lot of overgivers in our group. I am one of them. So trying to figure out, where does that come from? Who in your life overgave, or who did you have to overgive to in order to make them happy? Because maybe you were afraid that if you didn't give enough, they wouldn't be happy, and then they would withhold their love. So trying to figure out where that comes from. Lack of self-care, like we mentioned. If you can give to everybody else, but you can't give to yourself, then we have some deep shadow work to do at this level. And just know, don't feel despair. I work on all of these issues too. And I promise you that if you work on them, you actually will make great gains in it. It's when we ignore them and we say it's too much, or I don't care, or I'm over it, that will often leave stuck and stagnant energy in the body that's going to affect us later in other ways. And this is the way that we clear that, so we have the pathway to use that energy in our body for better things, for our spiritual evolution, our spell work, connecting to deities and things outside of us. And then rigidity and the inability to go with the flow. If you're really rigid, if you're always on schedule, if you can't get off schedule, that's something to work through in your shadow work as well. So if you feel like shadow work is something that you want to explore, definitely check out or consider joining our Shadow Seekers membership when we open back up. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. Just a few more ideas before we close here. Self-expression and creativity. So I mentioned that this chakra is connected to creativity. So do something creative. Go to Michael's, pick out some kind of an art or craft kit and have some fun. If there is something that you used to do, let's say you used to crochet, or you used to knit, or you used to do counted cross stitch, or used to paint, or whatever it is that you used to do, go try to do some of that again. This is like how we stoke the fire of creativity inside of us. And when we are doing creative things, naturally we increase the creative energy that we have to use for other areas of our life. So like, right, for creating the life outside of us that we want. So if somebody's having trouble like manifesting, I would say like do something creative. And it may, like knitting, it may not seem like it's connected in any way, but it's connected in a lot of ways. The other thing to do is to check out the book The Artist's Way. The author is Julia Cameron. She is the ex-wife of Martin Scorsese, and she has written multiple books on creativity, the first one being The Artist's Way. It is a 12-week workbook on how to, it's not really a workbook, but it's exercises in it, but it's a 12-week book. And you can actually extend that into like a year's study if you want, and do one chapter a month. But it just goes through different areas of how you can find more creativity in your life. She talks about various things like writing morning pages in the morning, which is stream of consciousness writing that just kind of like, it kind of dumps all the crap out of our brain that otherwise we'd be ruminating and spinning our wheels on all day. It gets it out on the paper, so you have more creative energy. And I'll tell you, it's hard to like see how that would work, but I can promise you, whenever I have been creatively blocked and I'm not doing those morning pages, and then I start doing it, and then all of a sudden I've written 3 more songs or something like that. So there really is, there's something to this. And then she also talks about walking to foster your creativity. And like I mentioned earlier, bringing back creative projects that you used to enjoy. If there were things that you used to do, see if you can bring some of those back. See if you can just find 10 minutes somewhere in your day to just do a little something creative, and that will really help to balance the energy of the sacral chakra. Our Shadow Seekers membership will be working with the idea of creativity next month in May in our Shadow Seekers membership, and we're going to be talking more about some of these ideas about how to foster creativity and to work with that kind of creative energy around us, which again helps us to manifest the life that we desire. And then finally, body appreciation. So learning body awareness, like I spent some time earlier talking about it, through yoga, through intuitive movement, that can all help us to find some body appreciation and awareness. Doing mirror work, especially if you have a lot of trouble with your appearance, doing mirror work can be difficult. But it can be pretty groundbreaking work when you can really force yourself to meet yourself with compassion, saying affirmations to yourself that are loving, even if you don't believe them at first. It's not the point of affirmations. You don't have to believe it. You just have to say it and trust that eventually they shift your energy a bit. But if you can find a way to have body appreciation and body love, that is the real key here to this chakra. So that is what we have tonight. So I'm just going to kind of tell you what is coming up in the future, and if there's anybody wants to leave me any questions here, I'd love to answer anything you have. There wasn't anything left for me this week in the group again. We're having some major issues with reach in the group. I think that's part of the problem. But if you do have a question, I'm here to answer them. I will tell you what's going on and what's coming up next while I'll give you some time to ask any questions that you might have. So next week on 4/29, we're going to have an episode for Beltane, because Beltane will be just a couple days after that. So I'm going to give you some ideas on how to celebrate Beltane. On 5/6, we had a requested episode on visualization techniques. That's an exciting episode coming up. On 5/13, I don't have an episode idea yet. I'll be filling that in. If anybody has any suggestions for me, let me know. If it's something that I know about and can do an episode on, I will absolutely add it to my list. And then on 5/20, we're gonna be back in about a month from now, and then we'll be starting the continuing our study of how to balance the chakras with how to balance your solar plexus chakra. Our Demystifying Witchcraft course is coming out soon. I had hoped to actually have it out this week. It is not going to be out this week. I have to practice what I preach, and I'm a little overwhelmed with all of my students in finals right now. It just wasn't the right time for me to be launching something else, so I have to manage my own energy. But Demystifying Witchcraft will be coming out. It's probably going to be delayed by a month, but it will be coming out. This is our signature course on how to it's really the foundational building blocks of witchcraft, from how to cast a circle, how to call the quarters, how to work with deities. There's several different modules on spell work and the science of magic and lunar timing, and it's kind of your one-stop shop for all things sort of witchcraft, and it is a course that will continue to add to in the future. So watch for that coming out soon. Our Shadow Seekers membership will be opening up next month, in just a few weeks, in fact. So you can watch for that too. So that is where we do all the shadow work and all the energy work that helps break through the blockages, that helps us get to our highest potential when it comes to our magic and our intuition and everything like that. So watch for that. If you'd like to join us, if you're not already a member, we'd love to have you. And we'll be kicking that off with a free, I think it's going to be a free public ritual, but it may be a workshop. But we always kick it off with something, and then the membership will open for a week. And then we do have a public Beltane ritual coming up on Sunday, 5/4. Watch for more info on that soon. If you're in Shadow Seekers or in Coven of Midnight's Flame, you will already have a ticket to that ritual. You don't have to worry about getting one. It comes as part of your membership. But if you are not part of one of those two groups, you can buy a ticket through donation, and we'll be sending out some more information about that next week. We're going to be doing the sacred marriage and working with Venus and Mars this year for Beltane. All right, so Tracy said, Tommy said he used to write song lyrics. Yeah, and so maybe that's something, if you want to work with creativity, that would be something to see if you can get back into, right? Sometimes it's hard, like as a songwriter myself, I go through these kind of dry periods of not being able to write. But if you try some of these sacral chakra practices, you may find that sparks your creativity, and you may be back to writing some lyrics. Tracy said, if you have illness in your gut and throat area, how could you balance the chakra? So the gut is going to be connected to the solar plexus, and then the throat is the throat chakra. So we'll be talking about those more in Ask Aislin in the future. Solar plexus is coming up in a month. But since you're in Shadow Seekers, we also have workshops on both of those. There's actually two for the solar plexus. One's the introduction, and one's on shadow work for the solar plexus. And then for the throat, we only have the introduction, but we're doing the shadow work for the throat chakra in June. So that's coming up very soon. So that'll be good for you, especially because you want to balance the throat. We're going to be working on that very shortly. But if you have any trouble finding those videos, reach out to me, let me know. We also have some videos on exercises for the throat chakra and for the solar plexus, and those are in the alignment practices section. But if you have any trouble finding anything for those two chakras, reach out and let me know, and I'll help. Any other questions, put them in the chat. I'm just gonna mention a few other things before we sign off here. So number one is the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work. If you don't have a copy of it already, I put a link in the comments here. And if you're on YouTube later, you'll find the link just in the description of the video. There's a link for the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work. So sign up for that if you're not already on our list, and that we also will send out every week a short email with the copy of the recording, a link to the recording of this video, and then just other tips on shadow work, energy work, and witchcraft. And then plus you get the free copy of Witch's Guide to Shadow Work. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have reached 1,000 subscribers, so that's the first milestone to get monetized, and now we need 4,000 viewing hours for the year, which we don't have yet. Per the calendar year. So if you like our YouTube channel, watch some of our videos, and you will help to contribute to adding to the watch hours that we need to get monetized. Engage in our Facebook group too. If you are part of Body Mind Witchcraft, the Facebook group, engage there. We're having very low engagement right now. And I think that part of it is just people's minds have really turned to political things, a lot going on in the world right now. And so it's really, the algorithm can only feed people so much. There's so much content. There's only so much space to feed it to people. And so it will feed what people are engaging in. So people are engaging in a lot of political content. It will continue to feed you more political content. So make sure that you also engage in spiritual content. If you are in Body Mind Witchcraft's group, you may have to go to our group and actually to actually see some of our posts, because they're not really reaching as many people as they could. And of course, leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, and that just helps us get this out to more people and helps us out a lot. Okay, so I am going to sign off for today, though, because I have to get to a student very soon, and this has gone on for a while. And I will, as always, I love being with you guys on Tuesday night. So thanks for being here with me and sharing this time, and I will see you next time. All right, until then, blessed be.